is going on? Welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. We are at episode number 80, the big 80. I'm your host, John Easop, and of course, alongside me, as always, from flamesnation.ca, it's the one, the only, Mr. Robert Munich. How are you, Robert?
The one, the only. Very nice. Thank you so much.
Unless you hired another Robert I don't know about.
No, dude, things are good. It's a good time to be a hockey fan. You got the playoffs going on. You got the World Championships, Memorial Cup, a bunch of draft coverage. Like this has been a really good time to be a hockey fan.
I found myself captivated yesterday by Slovenia at Italy at the World Championships. And that's how you know you may have a problem with watching too much hockey when you're into that type of a game. I also found myself drawn into Great Britain, Germany for a while as well. So there was some great hockey action. Robert, before we get into the topics this week, how excited are you to watch the Vegas Golden Knights attempt to sweep the Avalanche and potentially on the road here to giving the Flames another first-round draft pick?
You know what? I feel very conflicted because I don't like Vegas. I don't like the way they go about their business. Although I do wish the Flames were a little more cutthroat, but maybe not to the same extent as Vegas. But, I don't. Yeah, like I said, I don't like the way they go about their business. To see them have so much success kind of sucks. And the crazy thing is, so they've been in the league for 9 years. They're going to go to their third Stanley Cup final. The Calgary Flames have only been to 3 Stanley Cup finals in their entire franchise existence. The Vegas Golden Knights are about to go to their third in 9 years as an expansion franchise. So like you hear stuff like that and I'm like, I don't want to cheer for them and I want a team like Montreal or Carolina to win. But at the same time, you're the Flames, you absolutely want that 2028 pick to turn into a first rounder. So yeah, part of me is like F Vegas, and then the other part of me is like, yeah, let's go Vegas. So I don't know what the hell to think right now.
It feels like dirty money, right?
It does.
It feels like if you're doing something shady, you're going to get $20 for it. But hey, at the end of the day, $20 is $20, right? So it's like, are you okay with that $20 being a dirty $20? So I'm very much like you. I'm like, I want to see Colorado come back and win it all because they were my prediction. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you can just kind of go away now, the Avalanche, and let's kind of put this to. It's cheering for them without actually cheering for them. So it's an interesting dilemma for a Flames fan. I think a lot of people feel how you feel, where it's like, we don't like how Vegas operates, but that having a pick jump 32 spots into the first round from where they would have picked in the second round is quite an intriguing thing to have, especially when you're rebuilding. So interesting to cheer for a team you don't like very much.
Yeah, and like the kind of interesting thing, I guess, is that come 2028, we don't know what Vegas is going to look like. They're starting to age out a little bit. I would say this is kind of the end of the prime of a lot of their players. So come 2028, who knows? I mean, the Golden Knights, they could potentially be a team that misses the playoffs or maybe gets in a wild card spot, and maybe that 2028 first turns into a half decent pick for the Flames. So yeah, from a pure Calgary Flames perspective, obviously you want Vegas to win. And it'd be cool to see a guy like Rasmus Andersson win a Stanley Cup as well. So yeah, there's a couple of reasons to be cheering for them.
Yeah, that Flames pairing of Hanifin and Andersson have been quite good these playoffs for Vegas. I wonder what that's like to have a playoff Hanifin and Andersson. I digress. All right.
We'll never know.
We should have known. We should have known for about 4 years, but we didn't. Thanks for living. Anyways, It's still off season, Robert, of course. It's been a long off season. There's a lot to not talk about. There's a lot to wait on. There's a lot that people want to get done and sorted out now, but you got to wait till June 26th when the draft kicks around. So leading up to there, the conversations are all about who you're picking at 6, who you picking at 6, who you picking at 6. So let's dive into the conversation a little bit differently. And I like how you worded it in our rundown today. Should the Flames prioritize quality or quantity in the draft? And I think the listeners will be very interested in your opinion and your viewpoint on this conversation, because I think you and I are on different sides of this conversation, Robert. So are the Flames, or should the Flames prioritize the quantity or the quality in this year's draft?
Yeah, I mean, the whole question just stems around the fact that the Flames have 11 total draft picks this year, and 8 of them are in the top 68. So there's an opportunity to take both approaches to the draft. If they want to focus on quality, they could move a lot of those picks and potentially have maybe 3 picks in the first round if they really wanted to. or they could take the quantity approach and they could use basically every single pick to continue to add to their stable of prospects. And the reason why I was thinking about this is because I was looking through, we'll call it the last 5 drafts for the Calgary Flames, and I'm just kind of wondering and thinking to myself, do the Flames have the number of prospects in their system, like good, high quality prospects, guys that can truly make a difference? Do they have the right number of those players in their system right now with where they are at in their rebuild? And so, we'll go back to 2020. You have Connor Zary, who's probably not going to be a Flame long term. It sounds like a trade is inevitable at this point. You have Yan Kuznetsov, who's turned into, I would say on a good team, Yan Kuznetsov's probably a third pairing defenseman, which is good. And the Flames need those types of players, but I don't think Kuznetsov is a true big time difference maker. And then everybody else from that draft, Jeremy Poirier, Jake Boltman, Daniil Chechilev, Ryan Francis, Rory Cairns, Ilya Solovyov are not going to be NHL players for the Flames. And then you go to 2021, you got Matt Coronado, who I think will be a good second-line winger for a long time, which is great. But then after him, it's William Stromgren, who I don't think is going to be an NHL player. Cole Huckins, Cameron Wynot, Cole Jordan, Jack Beck, Lucas Siona, Arseny Sergeyev. I don't know how many of those guys are going to be full-time NHLers. Maybe Sergeyev turns into a backup goalie. And then you got the disastrous 2022 class, Topi Roney, Parker Bell, Cade Lidler. None of those guys are NHL players. And then 2023, you got Honzik, who kind of looks like a nice two-way third-line winger. Good to have, but not like a true star or a difference maker. Etienne Morin had a really rough rookie year. Don't know if he's a full-time NHLer. Then you got Suniev, question marks around his long-term viability as an NHLer. And then you got Jane Lipinski, Yegor Yegorov, Axel Hertig. Don't know if there's a truly a difference maker in that group. So and then, I'll quickly go over 24 and 25, where a lot of draft experts have said, these have been really good drafts for the Calgary Flames. And of course, in 24, you got Perek and Gridden, who are going to be difference makers. Those are 2 great picks. After those guys, I'm starting to wonder about this class a little bit. Andrew Basha had a really tough go of it in the AHL and played great in the dub this year, but really struggled. I don't know if I see him being a true difference maker, a top 6 forward in the league. Maybe he plays a bottom 6 role one day. And then Jacob Battaglia, they just traded. Henry Muse, there's some upside there. He's coming off an injury. We don't truly know. Then you got Kirill Zarubin, Trevor Hoskin, Luke Nisa, Hunter Lang, Eric Jameson. Don't necessarily know if there's a difference maker there. And then you have last year's draft. We have Cole Reshny and Cullen Potter, who look like they could be NHL players, especially Reshny. And then you got, lottery ticket and Stocksilius, Maceo Phillips, who I don't think has NHL potential, if I'm being totally honest. And you got Wittenbach, who could be a good top 6 forward. And then Aiden Lane and 2 7th-round picks in Jacob Leander and Jan Medvenko. So I go through that list of players just to show that I don't know if the Flames right now are at a point where they have the true number of difference makers in their prospect system where they can take an approach where it's quality over quantity in this year's draft. I would say Gridden, Coronado, Honzik are full-time NHLers, and Gridden and Coronado are probably the 2 difference makers there. Then you kind of have a group of kind of lottery tickets where it's Reshny, Potter, Wittenbach, Suniev, Stocksilius. If you can get 3 of those guys to be NHLers, you'd be happy. And then I think there's a group of kind of long shot difference makers like Tyson Gross, who, he's kind of looking like he could be a 4th-line center. Don't know if he'll be anything more than that. And then you got Castagna, Stromgren, Cairns, Hoskin, Basha, Aiden Lane, Luke Misa, Max Curran. If you can get one of those guys to be a full-time NHLer, I think you're happy. So I'm just, I say all of this just to say, should the Flames approach this year's draft with a quantity mindset and not trading those picks? Because I still think that they're at a point in their rebuild now where they still need to continue to add a lot of bodies to this prospect pool, because I don't think they're at the level they need to be at right now, if that makes sense. So I know that's a lot of talking there, but I'd be curious to kind of get your thoughts on that, John.
Yeah, you make really good points. You want to make sure that you're getting difference makers. You want to make sure that you're putting your club in the right spot to be successful, and so there's layers to it. And you went through nice tiers. I really appreciate those tiers that you put out there with certain levels of guys. For me though, you listed off a ton of dudes, whether they're difference makers or not down the line. It's all what we don't know. It's hard to say. So player development is going to be very key on a lot of these guys to get them to the next level. And a lot of these guys probably aren't going to be difference makers. A few of these guys are going to be role players, and a few of these guys are gonna pan out and be what you want them to be. You've got 11 picks in this year's draft, and you add 11 players to an already long list that you put out there. You're talking close to 65, 70 guys that have been drafted or are currently on the roster for the Flames. That's a lot of space, a lot of guys for more space than you have. So with that being said, I'm still at the category of where you want to get some quality here with these 11 picks, and you're still going to get yourself a good number of picks. You're not going to go from 11 picks down to like 4. That's just not going to happen. You're still going to have quite a few picks. I still see the Flames, even if they're aggressive in this year's draft, having 8 or 9, maybe 7 picks somewhere in that area, that 8-9 spot. Gonna have, and that's still a lot of players adding to your pool here. So for me, it's an interesting conversation because you laid out, you want these different makers, and I absolutely agree with you here, but you also need to make sure you have, to get those different makers, you need to be a little bit more aggressive. You also have 5 picks in the first 3 rounds in 2027 and 5 in the first 3 rounds in 2028. One of those could potentially be another first rounder as well. So you have a lot of early picks in the next few drafts as well. So for me, I'm not really worried about having the number of players or bulk drafting, I guess, because you have so many early round picks over the next 3 drafts that you can make a lot of hay with the quality of player rather than quantity, and still have a lot of quantity because you have 8 in the first 3 rounds this year, and then you have 10 in the first 2 rounds of following 2 years combined. That's 18 players you can still add and have quality to it. So that's why I kind of lie on it, Robert, is you have a lot of great bodies in camp here. And now for me, it's time to adding a little bit of quality into those players, because you're going to have Basher, if he's a 4th liner in the National Hockey League, that's still a nice little role you have there. Stock Stalius, what if he's a 3rd line center? That's a good role player. It's time to get those guys who are going to be your true difference makers, the guys to play with the Griddens, to play with the Honziks, to play with the Coronados in your top 6 and push this team forward. So that's where I kind of lie in the conversation. I like how you said at the beginning, though, you can almost kind of do both of having 11 picks in this year's draft. But those early picks for me are going to be key for the Flames here.
Yeah, I mean, and like you can go about it. You can go about finding good players kind of both ways that we just described. If the Flames want to find those true difference makers, maybe they trade a bunch of those picks to move up to number 2 to guarantee themselves Ivar Stenberg.
Mm-hmm.
Or can you trade a bunch of picks of Vancouver who, talking about quantity, they have literally no quality or quantity in their prospect pool. Like, they need to pick as many players as possible. Could they be interested in moving down to 6? Or could Chicago be interested in if Stenberg's still available? So, you can do that, or you can just treat, particularly the 8 picks in the top 68. You could also treat those as lottery tickets,
mm-hmm.
and taking major swings on players with high end upside. And out of those 8 players, maybe you find 3 that become NHL players, or maybe you trade a bunch of those picks to move up to 2, and you take 1 player in Stenberg who can make a difference. Like, there's a couple interesting ways they can go about it, and I'm gonna be fascinated to see how they approach the draft and how they approach all these draft picks, because part of me thinks that Conroy's, we're starting to hear some rumors that Conroy's really starting to make some calls and do everything he can to try and move up. So yeah, I think it's just an interesting discussion. I'm just after kind of reviewing the Flames prospect pool here. I know, like, a lot of people have them ranked in the top 10. A couple had them ranked in the top 5. I'm just wondering, is the prospects pool that good? Because, like you said, there's a lot of names there. How much true quality is in there? How many true difference makers? And when I say difference makers, I mean top 6 forwards, top 4 defensemen. How many guys are have a overwhelming percentage shot at becoming those types of players who are in their system right now? And I I would say Reshny has a really good chance. I think Ethan Wittenbach has a really good chance. I think Potter does.
Yep.
You know, outside of those guys, I don't know how many guys are really have that upside where they can be legitimate difference makers in the NHL. So, yeah, and how do they want to approach it? Do they want to take 8 players in the first 68, or do you want to use those picks to move up to take 1 player or maybe 2 players in the first round that you think are going to be home run hits? So, I'm kind of talking myself into a circle here, but both options I think are intriguing, and I think both options could be something that the Flames could do and have success with. I don't really know if I lean one way or another right now. I mean, the one question I'll throw to you is just like, do you like the idea of trading up and targeting a guy like Stenberg or Malhotra or even Gavin McKenna if he falls?
Oh, if it's McKenna, I'm running to the podium. It's a fascinating conversation because if the Flames want to be that aggressive, they have the assets to it. Can you stomach giving up 4, maybe 5 pieces to move up 4 spots, 3 spots to get that player? Are you sold that high on Stenberg that he's a no doubt guy that you project him to be your top line winger, a guy that's going to do what Marner does for the Knights for you? That type of player, is he going to be that high on your list? See, for me, you have to be so sure about trading up for that type of player, and you just don't see those trades is my only really big thing. I was asked the same question on a couple other podcasts I've been on, and my answer back to them is you don't see these picks move. And that's the problem. And so you have to overpay. So are you okay overpaying for a Stenberg? Are you okay overpaying for Malhotra? Are you that sold on these guys that they are no doubt first line difference makers? And that's such a hard thing to project because we've seen both sides of the coin. We've seen players get picked in the top 3 and they're absolute studs. Your Eichels come to mind, your McDavids, your McKinnons come to mind. And then you've seen guys just flame out. You know, look at Yakupov, what he became for the Oilers. You look at Alexander Daigle when he was taken by Ottawa. Like there are those Stefan for the, was it Atlanta, Stefan? You look at those players that fall off. And so you have to be sure that Stenberg is that player and he is good enough. And I think he is. I think he is a top line projected winger in this league. And if you are that sold on the guy, then the other question becomes, what is the package? Are you willing to give up 6? Probably your other pick, which would be probably 31 or 32, given how the Knights are playing right now. You're going to give up a couple of those second rounders, maybe a roster player, or you're looking at a pick from next year's first 2 rounds that are added into that as well. So is that cost for you, Robert, worth moving up? Because that's a high price to pay for a guy who you're hoping is a top line player. I love Stenberg. I just don't know if I'm prepared to pay that cost. It's a big cost.
Yeah, it would be a huge cost. And I've heard the NHL player comparison for Stenberg would be a guy kind of like Jake Gensel.
Yep.
So like, is it worth trading all those assets for a guy that might be, a 70 to 80 point winger? Or are you better off maybe trying to trade those for a young center who's like playing in the NHL right now? Mm-hmm. Or like, do you want to try and trade up to number 1 to get Gavin McKenna, who I think is probably as close to a guaranteed top line player as you're going to find in this draft? I mean, the possibilities are endless here. And the one thing I kind of wanted to talk about today, I mean, I don't know if I'm getting too ahead of myself today, but
it's all good.
Just like the idea of who are the trade chips that the Flames could use here to potentially move up. Because like I'm looking at the draft order and I'm looking at a team like San Jose or Chicago, and they're 2 young teams that really want to take the next step and officially get out of this rebuild. Could you entice a team like San Jose or Chicago with some of the roster players you have right now with the Flames? And I'm looking at guys like a Zach Whitecloud, who, supposedly had a lot of value at the trade deadline. The Flames decided to keep him. Would you be willing to part with a guy like him if it means that you could secure somebody like Stenberg? So, like you trade your 6th overall pick, Whitecloud, and maybe a couple seconds to move up to guarantee yourself Ivar Stenberg. Like, is that the type of move the Flames should be making right now? That's one of the kind of internal debates I've been having with myself recently.
I think when you're talking trading up in the draft, I think when you're in a position the Flames are in when you're rebuilding, there shouldn't be much not on the table. Like, obviously, Dustin Wolf's not going to be on the table. You're probably not going to have Matt Bay-Gridden on the table unless someone's giving you McKenna, maybe. I don't know. But for me, I don't think there are many players on this roster that you should label as absolute no touches because of the situation this team is in, where this franchise is going. You obviously want to project who's going to be your future, and those are the guys you kind of want to hold on to. So talking Perek, Gridden, Coronado, maybe Wolf, and maybe a couple other names you could throw at me there. But if you're talking White Cloud, why wouldn't you make that move? Like, I look at that second pick the Flames have, that's going to be the Golden Knights, probably 31 or 32 here, and you take a couple of that with maybe a Blake Coleman or a Zach Whitecloud and maybe a second round pick. Can you move yourself back up into the early 20s and target a guy that maybe is there that you really, really like? Maybe that's the kind of move we look at from Craig Conroy at the draft. And that's the kind of move that I would look at if I was Craig Conroy, because at six, you're going to get a player that I think is going to play and play quickly and is going to be a good difference maker for your team. Maybe not the high-end first star that McKenna is going to be, but you're still going to get a player that's going to be productive for your franchise. Can you move up and find a second one of those in the later stages of the first round, like the Flames did with Matt Bay-Gridden? So for me, Robert, when you're talking those kind of trades or those kind of moves, I don't think anyone really should be off the board except for those who have absolutely identified as the next core. Because if someone comes to you and says, hey, we'll give you a pick 35, but you got to give us Zari and the 60-something pick. Well, yeah, you're going to make that move because Connor Zary is a player that hasn't proven himself to be a role player, doesn't have a defined role on this roster, and you're willing to part with that because you're going to get yourself another player. Those are the kind of moves I think we should look at. And so for me, the whole roster should be on the table, essentially.
I think you make a lot of great points there. And, like while you were talking there, a question kind of popped up in my head, and it's just,
I love questions.
What's the hardest thing to find in the NHL? And when it comes to roster construction, and it's star players, it's first line caliber players, top pairing defensemen, and the more we're talking right now, the more I'm thinking to myself, that the Flames should actually probably do everything in their power over the next 3 drafts, 26, 27, 28, when they have all this draft capital. Do everything you can to move up and find your star players, because you look around the league right now, what's easy to find. And, you take a look at what the Flames just did at the trade deadline. They got Ryan Strome for a 7th round pick. They found that third line center easily. They got Zach Whitecloud as essentially a throw-in to a trade and to make the money work. They got Oli Mata. They got these pieces that you can surround your core with, but what they don't have are those core players. So actually, the more we're talking about it and the more we had like the quantity versus quality discussion, the more now I'm actually convincing myself that the best thing that they can do is to trade up. Honestly, in this draft and probably the next 2 after this, trade up and try to get the best player you possibly can. And maybe the idea of, picking 8 players in the top 68 maybe doesn't make the most sense for this team. Maybe the idea is try to get 2 players, like 2 high quality players in the first round, so that you can add to that group of Zane Perek and Dustin Wolf and Matt Bay-Gridden, who are, and you can throw Cole Reshny or Wittenbach in there, high quality young players, but you got to find the star players. So actually, the more we're talking about it, man, I mean, the more I'm kind of convincing myself that going after those high quality players and trading up in the draft is actually the way to go about it. And like you said, none of the roster players should be off the limits who are 25 years or older. Like I'm looking at the Flames roster right now. Could you use a Blake Coleman or Morgan Frost, Connor Zary, Zach Whitecloud, Oli Mata, Devin Cooley? Like maybe those are the types of guys you could throw in a trade package, along with some of the draft picks you currently own to move up. Like those. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I think that makes a lot of sense for this team.
That's exactly where I'm at and where I come in the conversation. It is the quality part of things. You can have 11 picks, okay? So even if you trade 3 of those picks around, you still got 8. So there's still a ton of room here. And I always talk about, people are talking about this moving up from 6, and I get that conversation because fans love to have those hypotheticals, and it makes for great Twitter conversations with the right people, and it's good fodder around the water fountain. But I look at that first rounder they have, and all those second round draft picks they have, and the roster players like the Colemans, the Zaris, maybe heck even talk about the Farabys or someone like that. You can package that pick up with a player and maybe a second, and you're moving up, because a lot of people want the Flames to find a center in this draft. Well, you look at the mid first rounder, and you got JP Hurtle, you got Maddox Dignesses, Mathis Preston, Liam Ruck. Like, there's centers projected in the early 20s, late teens. Wyatt Cullen is another good example of a player that's there. Like, there are players there. The Flames are aggressive and can identify the right center. They might not get the best center in the quote unquote draft rankings, but they could get a top 5 center on their rankings in that spot and allow them to take the best player available at 6 and go back up into the draft and bring themselves in another player that they really believe in and that they really can project to be a difference maker for this roster. That's where I come down on this conversation, Robert. All about the quality. You have the quantity and picks to go that direction if you want to, but you have the ability to be aggressive, to pick the right players, to find a centerman maybe later in the mid first round pick, and have a quality pick there, and still have probably 7 or 8 picks to go still in this draft, plus all that you're going to have in 27 and in 28. And so if it takes a roster player to do that type of move, I don't hesitate, unless that roster player is, if they're asking me for Gridden or Parekh, then I'm going to probably say no. But if they're asking you say for Connor Zary or Jaeger Sharangovich and a second rounder and that first rounder to move up 5-10 spots, then why wouldn't you look at that type of move? These players over the age of 25 are not going to be the ones that bring you a cup eventually. And that's the ultimate goal here. So do you want to build a winner, or do you want to go back to the mushy middle? You want to build a winner, in my opinion, it's time to start getting some quality players in here and start getting that roster headed that direction.
And the question I think Flames fans and the organization itself needs to ask them is, are we going to give up the opportunity to draft a potential difference maker because we want to keep a guy like Zach Whitecloud?
Yes.
You know, Zach Whitecloud, he's under contract for another 2 years. Is he part of the long-term future of this team? If the Flames genuinely feel like he's going to be here for another, 6 or 7 years, and he's going to be a leader, he's going to be an assistant captain or maybe a captain one day, then, I guess then you'd want to keep him. But, the same question could apply to Devin Cooley. I look at a team like the Florida Panthers. Sergei Bobrovsky's a free agent. I don't know if they're going to be able to re-sign them because of the salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Cooley is coming off a fantastic year. He's having a great World Championships. I don't know if you've seen some of the saves he's been making out there. He's been phenomenal. Is there a way to package Cooley, Vegas's first round pick, and maybe a couple seconds to move up to where Florida is at number 9? Because pick 9, drafting a player there isn't going to help the Florida Panthers for probably 4 or 5 years. Over the next 4 or 5 years, they want to win another couple cups. So, are there a couple vets on the Flames? Whether it's Cooley and Whitecloud and Vegas's first and a second to move to 9. Could that be a potential option? I just think the Flames, they're in a position right now where they can't be getting emotional about some of these players they have, because
100%.
You take a look at the list that we just talked about. Zach Whitecloud, there's an emotional attachment to this player right now because of the type of person he is and what he did at the end of the season for the Flames. Like, can you put that aside and make a kind of a pragmatic business decision to trade a guy like him in order to make your team better for the next 15 years?
Mm-hmm. Or
same goes with Cooley, same goes with Matta, same goes with Morgan Frost and Blake Coleman and Joel Farabee, and I guess you could throw Connor Zary in the mix. I mean, those are the guys I think you want to be dangling and putting them in trade packages to potentially move up and find those difference makers.
I love what you said there. I love that you said that. Don't be emotional about this. This is the business side of the game. This is the side of the game that's not always the funnest part for general managers to deal with. But if you're talking about moving up to 9 like you are there, Robert, and that's a fascinating conversation there. and there is a White Cloud in the conversation or a Devin Cooley in the conversation, you've got to be able to make that move because it's best for what the organization is. It can, imagine the Flames picking at 6 and 9, what you could get with those two picks, the players that you could bring in here to add to this organization. Is it worth trading away a guy who's an emotional leader like Zach Whitecloud? Well, you'd have to look at that. I think it is, because you're bringing yourself in what you need for this organization, and that's skill. I always bet on skill, and you can always find those emotional leaders elsewhere. Ryan Strome brings that. Michael Backlund brings that in different ways as well. So it's an interesting conversation to have, because for me, if you're talking about moving up in this draft and they're asking for a roster player, unless that roster player is number 32 or number 92 or number 19, I'm going to have a hard time saying no to that conversation, because it's going to better my club. It's going to better what I want to do. And it's going to put me on the track to what I'm looking to do for this team. That's get high-end elite skill. That's what's going to win you hockey games. That's what's winning teams in the Final Four right now, hockey games, that high-end elite skill. So I'm quite with you on that one, Robert. It's a fascinating conversation, and I'm sure there's about a million opinions out there of quality versus quantity and who do we trade and how aggressive do the Flames get in this draft. And for me, it's like, what is Conroy thinking? Because he's got a million options on the table right now.
And I think a lot, we were kind of talking about you can't be emotional. And I think a lot of the emotion in these decisions when it comes to some of the players that I just mentioned comes down to the idea that the Flames want, they want high character guys. They want guys who are going to help young players develop and help them, get through this rebuild and get on the other side. But I think if there's one thing that last year's trade deadline taught us, was that you can find those good veteran leaders, and you can find them like pretty easily. Like I mentioned before, Whitecloud, he was a throw-in. Like nobody, I don't think, truly expected him to make this kind of difference. Can you find another Zach Whitecloud out there? Oli Mata was a throw-in to a deal. Ryan Strome was acquired for a 7th-round pick, essentially a salary cap dump. Can you go out, say you end up moving a few guys who you deem as good leaders on this team, whether it's Blake Coleman or Joel Farabee or Whitecloud or Mata or Cooley. If you move out a few of those guys, I feel like you can go out and find them, like whether it's through a trade on a team where they're kind of capped out and they're looking to move a vet. Can you find a trade partner there in free agency? I know the class isn't great, but like, can you go down the list and find good, solid veteran players who are unrestricted free agents? I'm just looking through the list here. There's
a couple that pop out for me.
Let's
can a Boone Jenner, a Nick Leddy, stand out for you. A Colton Sissons, Luke Shen, Brett Kulak's out there, guys.
Yeah, overpay those guys.
Yeah, and those are the type of guys I'm right on board with you, Robert. Like, you can make that move at the draft and say Whitecloud goes out the door, and then turn around 3 days later in free agency and say it's Carson Soucy. Hey, Carson Soucy comes in here for 3 years at $3 million or whatever the heck it might be.
Or you bring back Eric Branson on a 2-year deal where you pay him a ton of money.
Bring back Kulak.
Absolutely. Those are the kind of guys, right?
Yeah,
even a Ryan Lomberg, Luke Glendenning, these are not what we're talking about is just bringing in strictly players for leadership, not on ice success, because none of these guys are going to help you get on ice success. But I think you can find good people easily to come in and replace some of those veteran guys if it means that you can turn them into something that can actually help your organization for the next 10 plus years.
Yeah, absolutely. It really shows that nothing should be off the table for Conroy, right? So if you're talking about making a trade at the draft, there's ways that you can replace emotional leaders and good veterans. If you don't make trade, then you don't need to worry about veterans in the free agency market. So there are ways of doing this where you can have your cake and eat it too. If you're Craig Conroy, you can get your quality player in the draft and use the quantity of draft picks that you have to move into that situation. And then you can use roster players. And you have an opportunity here to replace these roster players. And you can get a veteran into the organization here and overpay him a little bit for a couple years if you really need that veteran on the back end, or you really want another veteran forward. If that's what you really want in your organization, there are ways of doing it. Those guys on your roster right now should not be holding you back from bettering your roster at the draft or bettering your roster in free agency. Those type of guys are just role guys and good in the room guys, and they're great to have, but they absolutely should not be the ones holding you back from making the move that's going to better your roster. And I think when you're Craig Conrad, you have all these options to do so. So that's a very good point by you, Robert.
Yeah, I mean, and just you look around the league right now, and with the rising salary cap, I think that teams it's looking like they're doing everything in their power to keep all their best players. And, like the days of, a flat salary cap and you're not able to afford your entire core and all that, looks like those days are kind of done. So the idea that you can acquire, your next core group of players through trades, you can find those star players through trades, I think is going to become less and less likely as the cap continues to rise. And then the other thing to keep in mind too is that if the Flames are going to trade for those difference-making players, a lot of them, depending on what age they are, like once you hit like 25, 26, your no move clause kicks in. Yep. A lot of them are going to have no moves and no trades. And, how many like really good high-end star players are going to waive their no trade clause to come to Calgary, especially over the next 3 or 4 years here while they're getting out of their rebuild. So really the way the Flames are going to have to build this next core group of players is entirely through the draft.
I agree.
And in the draft, I mean, how many elite, difference-making core group players come from each draft? Is it 2, maybe 3? A lot of the times it could be 1 or 0. Sometimes it could be 5 or 6, but they don't come around that often. So, just the idea of prioritizing moving up in the draft and taking players in the top 3 and adding those core players at all costs, I actually think makes the most sense for the Calgary Flames right now.
Yeah, I'm all about building through the draft, and that's my big philosophy. If I was a general manager, I want to build through the draft, and then when you are good enough and you're on the rise, much like a San Jose team is right now or Anaheim team is right now, that's when you go make your trades. That's when you go bring in those other guys who are going to push you over the top. And you can always use free agency while you're building to fill in your holes, like bringing back a Ryan Lomberg type of move to help solidify the bottom part of your roster and help build up your veteran presence for those young kids in the room. But the next 3 drafts for the Flames are going to be huge for them because you have so many picks, especially in the first 3 rounds, that are going to allow you to do exactly what you're talking about there, Robert. Allow you to build a good core group through the draft. And once you've got these good players, we've seen it in Edmonton. Nobody wants to willingly live in Edmonton, but when McDavid and Draisaitl are there and that team is winning and they're pushing the wagon in the right direction, they're going to get the free agents up there. They're going to get the guys going up there and re-signing like Matthias Ekholm. I know he was traded for, but then he re-signs and he stays there. And those kind of guys are flocking towards those organizations because they have an opportunity to win, to be a successful organization. So for me, I'm right there with you, Robert. It's draft this roster, build a nice core of this roster, and then see what you can do from there. But it's all for me about starting with this year's draft. Make the right decisions here. Like, I don't think we're going to miss at 6. I think there's going to be a good player there at 6. And then from there, what are you going to do with the rest of these draft picks? There's 10 more draft picks after that one. What do you do with them to help your build? And fascinating conversation, Robert.
Yeah, it could go so many different ways. And one thing I'll throw at you. So,
yep.
How many like players do you need in your core to become like a Stanley Cup contender? Like high quality, like really good players. How many do you think you need in your core? Is it 5, 6, 7, 4?
21, Robert. No,
that'd be nice.
I think you need a good line. So I say 3 forwards, a couple of really good anchored defensemen, and a goaltender. So I would probably say about 5 or 6.
And how many do you think the Flames have right now?
1, maybe 2.
Who would that be? Do you think that's Wolf and
Perek, or Wolf and Gridden?
And then you hope Wittenbach one day.
And then then for me I'd be hoping for whoever's not Perek or Gridden, whoever's not on my list. You'd hope the other one does turn out how they projected last year. You're hoping Wittenbach, you're hoping Reshny, you're hoping whoever's picked at 6. And then hopefully a surprise somewhere down the line as well. Like you always like those teams who have that one guy that come out of nowhere to be a good core piece for you. Like a 2nd or 3rd round pick you're not really thinking of. So if you're hoping someone else comes out there. So for me, the Flames 1, maybe 2, and they got to build up there still.
So I'm going to say over the next 2 or 3 drafts here, they got to find at least 3 members to add to that core group.
Yeah, that's fair.
And like we've just talked about, the best way to do that is to pick I would say the top 3. That's where you find the true star level players. Maybe over the next 3 years, we see them trade. They try to trade up and use a lot of those draft picks that they've acquired and do everything in their power, even if it means overpaying. Pick in the top 3 and get those guys in your organization. Because the league, with 32 teams, with there not being a ton of truly elite players available every year, and then the league's going to expand soon to 34. There's no doubt in my mind that that's going to happen. Finding the true star quality difference making players is almost next to impossible. So I'm just thinking the Flames should probably do everything they can to get into the top 3 and find those players. And it might be time to get kind of ruthless with it.
I think that's where Team Tank's getting the bad rap, is they see that same vision you just talked about there, Robert, how the top 3, you're going to find Barkovs, you're going to find Eichels, you're going to find those type of difference makers compared to some nice players that are out there. Like Jason Robertson's a nice player, but is he a difference maker? Well, Barkov's a difference maker. He's a guy you can anchor it around. And so the difference between quality in that top 3 and then guys outside like 6, 7, 8, 9 in the draft is the quality is so much higher in these no doubt prospects that you get up there. And so I think it's important for the Flames, and I'm not Team Tank, is team logic dictates, hey, we need to spend a year or 2 picking in the top 3. And I know the draft lottery plays into that. I know the Flames had some really bad ball lottery luck this year. Like picking at 4 is not bad, but picking at 6 is a lot different, right? And that's why Flame fans are upset here. And I think that's why Team Tank is trying to get at. They're not saying they want to watch a bunch of losing, is they realize we need those top 3 guys. So whether that's being aggressive like you're talking about, Robert, and getting up there and picking in that top 3, it's putting yourself in a spot where the lottery balls can't help but keep you in that top 3, or that you're in that top 3 via the lottery balls. So I think I'm right there with you. It's very important the Flames pick once, twice, close to that top 3 or in that top 3, so that they can get themselves that guy. How nice would a guy like Barkov be? I know it's an extreme example of bringing up Barkov, but that's the kind of player you get at 3. You need those guys to be successful. You watch these teams be successful. Vase is successful because they have a guy who was picked in the top 3. Yes, they traded for Jack Eichel, but he was picked up there. They have guys around that can be successful. The Avalanche with Makar was, he was up there. Opportunity for them to be successful. It's a story as old as time when it comes to the National Hockey League, is those high-end elite guys are how you win Stanley Cups and how you get to Stanley Cup finals or even conference finals. You need those players. So I'm with you, Robert. I think it's very important for the Flames not to rush this rebuild and to take the opportunity. It's going to suck to watch the Flames not be a good hockey team for 2 or 3 seasons. But if you have that end vision that, hey, in 29-30, this team's going to start turning the corner and they're going to be the new San Jose or the new Anaheim and a team that's coming around the corner, I think that light at the end of the tunnel is a good thing to have and a good thing to focus on while they're trying to build it. But just don't rush it, man. I'm with you. Pick top 3 and pick those quality players because you need them to win.
If you go back and look at, over the last 20 drafts, guys who went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even throw it up to 7 and 8. The difference in terms of like superstar power or like stardom between guys that go in the top 3 compared that goes from 4 to, we'll call it 8, it's actually like pretty remarkable. I mentioned it on last week's episode that I put together a list of every player to go 6 overall over the last 20 years. And there were 2, I would call like franchise altering players that got picked in 20 years. And it was Moritz Seider and Matthew Tkachuk. Mm-hmm. And, guys like Martone and Iginla could end up being those players. We'll have to wait and see on that. But, the percentage chance of finding your true superstar at number 6 is significantly lower than if you're in the top 3. And it's something that the Flames, I think, need to consider and keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you there. I'm just pulling up a draft here because I want to go off that conversation a little bit here, because I brought up Jason Robertson and he's a fine player. He's a fine player. That the Where is it here?
He was a second round pick, I think, in 2021.
Yeah, so he's a 39th pick. So I pulled up that draft just because that was the draft I was thinking of. The difference between what Nico Hischier brings you and what Casey Middlestat who brings you, who was picked at 8, is a big difference. Makar at 4 versus Cal Foote at 14. So the point made by you there is you have your top 5 and top 3 guys. Miro Heiskanen was picked at 3 that year. You look at those guys and you go just down 5 or 6 picks, and you're going from guys like Miro Heiskanen and Cale Makar to Cal Foote and Eric Brandstrom in the matter of 8 picks. So the difference between picking high and picking those nice guys at the top of the draft is you have a higher chance of being successful and bringing in the player that's going to be a difference maker for you. And those players, well, at the time, Eric Brandstrom was a really nice pick. Valimaki was after that with the Flames. Those are nice picks, nice pieces to have. You've seen short NHL careers or very little NHL careers from those guys, even though they were nice at the time to pick at those spots. That was a weak draft, by the way. And so it's imperative for the Flames here to make sure that they're picking those quality guys at the top. Be there to build your roster with, because it's going to make a big difference down the road here. Because if you continually pick at 8 or at 12, you're never really going to, the chances of you hitting on a mega stud superstar at the end of the day is a lot less than if you're picking Nico Hischier or Miro Heiskanen in the top 3 of that draft. So that's
missing that big on someone who could be potentially like a core member of your team could be the difference between you becoming a contender or not.
100%. Oh my word.
Taking Cale Makar, I don't know if this is the same draft. I apologize if this isn't the same, but getting Cale Makar at 4 instead of Brandstrom, wherever he went.
Brandstrom went at 15 that year.
15. So if the Flames, if they're trying to push for the playoffs one year and they finish in the mushy middle, taking that pick at 15 over something like 4 literally could be the difference between you not getting out of your rebuild or not.
That was a rough draft, by the way. Calgary picked Valimaki at 16, and then they didn't pick again until the 4th round. And when they
maintain Valimaki, he would have been a full-time NHL player, a good top 4 defenseman had he not had all those injury troubles.
I agree. I got his jersey when he was a rookie for a reason. I was very high on him. The Flames didn't pick till 4, and they picked Adam Ruzicka in that 4th round. So it just shows like there's quality versus quantity conversation. It can go back years and years and years, and it's player development. To your point there, Robert, with Valimaki, to your point, player development and injuries are also a big part of when you draft these guys and project these guys out. So when you pick your top end guys, though, it's easier to project them into your lineup, into your roster when you're taking these lottery picks at 15, 16. It's a lot harder to build a team with. And then you get Valimaki situations, and no disrespect to the fella, that looks like a bad pick at the end of the day now.
Can I throw who says no by you?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I think we should try to establish like what it would actually take to move up. So
okay, yeah.
Let's say it's Calgary and San Jose. Calgary wants to move up to pick 2 to take Ivar Stenberg. And San Jose, I think they would be okay with something like that, potentially, because they desperately need a defenseman, and there'll be a really good defenseman available at number 6. And I think if you include, a couple NHL players in the mix to try and get them over the top next year, it's something that could intrigue them. So let me just throw this by you. What if it's pick 6, Zach Whitecloud, Blake Coleman, and 2 seconds to move up to number 2? Is that something that you think San Jose would say no to, or Calgary, or is that a fair deal?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I think one question would be, does Coleman come with an extension?
Good question. Let's say no.
Okay. And then we'll just say the middle 2 picks for the second rounder.
We'll go their first 2 that they own. I think it's 35 and 36.
35 and 36. So essentially close to being first rounders.
Yeah.
I think the package is fair. I think the package is what it's going to take, or along the lines of what it's going to take to move up there. I wonder if they press for that second first rounder instead of one of those seconds. But I think it would be a deal worth the conversation at. They get themselves a defenseman, which they really need. They get themselves a leader, which anyone could always use a Blake Coleman, a guy that helps maybe slot their top end, right? So I don't know if the San Jose Sharks say yes, even though it fits what they would be looking for and what they need on their roster. I wonder if the ages of these two players plays a part in why they would say no. And I wonder if one of those second rounders needs to be another first in order to move up to get the because we're talking pick 2, right? And it is only 4 spots, so that's the question here as well. That's a good trade offer, Robert, I think.
Yeah, and so the reason I came up with that was because like I kind of think that would be an overpay from Calgary's perspective, but at the same time, I think like, you know, when you were running through it there, that's the kind of deal that I think it's going to take to
I think so too.
Legitimately get San Jose to seriously consider doing something like that. And I think that's a ton to give up. If
you're talking Chicago at 4 and you have a similar deal on the table, I think Chicago says yes. I wonder, because the appearance of first for second round pick in some of these trades, like the appearance of it makes the trade look so much different to a lot of people. I wonder if the difference between picking 35 and picking 31 or 32 really matters that much in the grand scheme of things to a team like San Jose for where the pick might be. I think San Jose would say no because I think they would value number 2 that much. But if they're going to move back, I think this is the type of trade they're looking at. And if you're Calgary, this is a price that you should be willing to pay to move up that high.
Yeah.
That's what I think. So if you told me on draft day that this exact trade happened, so White Cloud, Blake Coleman, the 6th overall, and 35 and picks 36, moved to San Jose, and you had an opportunity at Stenberg or McKenna, whoever is at number 2, I think that's a price you're willing to pay for a guy who I'm going to call both those guys are probably no doubt top end guys, top line guys at the peak of their careers, guys that will be a difference maker. I think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about quality and quantity. Because if you trade those 2 picks at 35, 36, you still have 31 or 32 that's going to be the Vegas pick to play around with, right? That could be another player. That could be one of those defensemen. That could be anything really you can think of at that area of the draft as well. So that's a very nice trade offer from Robert. One that made me think a lot, actually. So I wonder if San Jose would think a lot.
I even wonder if Toronto would think about something like that. Because I mean, they desperately.
I think Toronto needs a trade like that.
I think they do too. Because I mean, I think what Chayka's going to do is they're going to try to retool this thing and try to get back in the playoffs next year. So if you could add a guy like Coleman and White Cloud, and then get a top end defenseman at pick 6, and get a couple seconds, and maybe you could turn those seconds into NHL players to help your roster now. Like, I wonder if that's something Toronto would even consider.
It's a shame Trey Livingstone not there because he'd do that in a heartbeat. He loves he loves them veterans.
You could take the 6th overall pick away from that package and he'd still take it.
Maybe. Jeez. Tree taking a stray that doesn't need to be taken, but hey, that's what we're here for. Intriguing. The conversation at the draft, the conversation around trading at the draft is an intriguing one. Before we go into the last topic here, Robert, just want one more thing thrown at you. I want to throw one more thing at you if I could have a proper sentence in English here. If the Flames went into this draft and instead of drafting a young centerman, they made a trade, and I'm just going to use a guy like Kent Johnson as an example of a young early 20s player who's a centerman who might be looking for a change of scenery, or a Shane Wright type of player. If the Flames went into this draft and that trade was on the table and you're Craig Conroy, would you make that trade sending, say, the 31st pick overall plus a couple other picks to whoever's looking for it, plus maybe a roster player to bring in a young center? So the question is, if you have an opportunity to bring in a young center via a trade in this draft, do you look at it?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on the player. I mean, if it's the 2 guys you'd mentioned, Kent Johnson or Shane Wright, I would not be interested in that because, you know, like we've just talked about, I think you really need to add difference makers. I don't know if those guys are truly the types of players that can put you over the top as an organization. And I just wonder if you have a better chance of maybe finding that at some of the draft positions that they have. You know, like, I'm not sold that Shane Wright's going to be a really good player in this league. You know, I see him as more kind of a Morgan Frost style player rather than, you know, a legit top 6 center. top 6 two-way center. And then Kent Johnson, he shows flashes. He had the 1 year where, I think he was at over 70-point pace over 82 games. And, outside of that, he's been wildly inconsistent. So I don't know if you want to commit that type of draft capital and assets to guys who aren't going to be guaranteed like top 6 figures for your team for a long time. So I would personally stay away from that. And I've been saying for a while now, I think that's a trade you make 2 or 3 years from now when you're close to, getting out of your rebuild. But while you're kind of at the very beginning stages of it, I wouldn't be spending those types of draft picks on those types of players. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Which leads perfectly into the conversation we need to have now. And that is, if you're picking 6 and you've chose not to trade for one of these younger centers, which I think I'm with you. I think that's a smart thing to do. And Tynan Lawrence is on the board at 6. Do you draft Tynan Lawrence?
I think it's more of an interesting conversation than people are giving it credit for right now. You look at the pedigree that Lawrence has, and just prior to this draft year, I mean, it was looking like he was a surefire top 3 pick. And, he was the playoff MVP in the USHL as a 16-year-old. This season, he's one of the youngest players in the draft, and he goes from the USHL in the middle of the season to the NCAA, going from playing against 16, 17, 18-year-olds to playing against, men and playing in a completely different environment with different systems. Like, obviously he was going to struggle. So I'm almost wondering if we're almost making too much out of Lawrence's struggles this season because of just all the factors that went into his year. So I think that there's a legitimate conversation to be had about Lawrence at 6. There does seem to be top 6 upside. He's got some decent size. He can fly, which the Flames desperately need. They need to get way faster over the next 5 years, and he could be a big part of that. And it addresses a positional need, a desperate positional need. I mean, they got Reshny, who, looks like he could be, decent second line center one day. They got Stocksilius, who knows what he's going to be. But I mean, outside of that, they have nobody down the middle. So I don't hate the idea between Tynan Lawrence or Bjork. Those are the types of guys I would be super interested in if I were the Flames. Where are you at on Lawrence?
This is the type of player that those people on X, you clearly haven't watched or paid attention, because a lot has been made over 18 games. Just the 18 games he played for Boston University, he had 7 points in those 18 games. And a lot of people are making a big deal over just those 18 games. The body of work for Tynan Lawrence suggests it's a lot different than what those 18 games suggest. For me, that suggested a miscalculation on his part going to college so quickly, which happens. He's a young kid. He made a decision, and some things pay off, some things don't pay off. And so it was a struggle for him in college. But before that, he was tearing apart the USHL. He tore apart the US under 16 nationals. He tore apart his AAA teams. He was a player counted on in a lot of situations for a lot of teams before going to Boston College. Definitely a miscalculation on his part. But at the same time, you spoke about it earlier, Robert. He went from playing players his age or younger to playing against guys his age and older. And that's a tough adjustment for some people to make. And when you're that young and you make that type of decision in your draft year, there's a little bit extra pressure that might come with it. So for me, I think the overall making too much of his 18 games at Boston College is a thing. You do have to account for it a little bit, of course, but it shouldn't paint the whole story for this player. So for me, it comes down to the debate of which defenseman is left at 6 from those defensemen that are on the board. We're talking the Carrolls, the Verhoffs, those guys there. And then versus Viggo Bork, which a lot of people have at 6 or around 6 as well, versus Tynan and Lawrence. What is your choice of poison, I guess, would be a way to put it. What do you value most important? And when I'm looking at the Flames roster and the struggle bus it's been to find centers, it's been Joe Newendike, it's been Sean Monahan, and it's been Michael Backlund are the only centermen that come to mind that have been anything really for the Flames over the last 30 years. And so when you have an opportunity to draft a centerman, he's listed at 6'1", he's close to 200 pounds. He's a guy that flies, like Robert said there. is a very intriguing offer for me, or a prospect for me. And for me, it's something that I would seriously look at if I were the Flames. What do you value more, though? Is it Carson Carroll's at 6 to help your defense, or is it a centerman in Tynan Lawrence? I think the conversation's real, and it's one that should be had. And I think we need to stop discounting what Tynan Lawrence actually is as a player, and go watch and research a little bit more than just taking some word of some guy on Twitter who thinks he's not the best pick. 'Cause I've seen a lot of that, a lot of polls out there, Robert, where people are taking just a big poo on what Tynan Lawrence is as a hockey player. And I think it's unfair to the player, because I think he's actually a really good hockey player. So conversation's real for me.
Yeah, I mean, and kind of going back to the draft conversation we had earlier, I wonder, is there a way where, if the Flames can't move up in the draft from 6 to 2 or something like that, could they take, a defenseman at 6, and then is there an opportunity to make another trade with the Florida Panthers and get to number 9, where you could take a guy like Tynan Lawrence?
Could you imagine Carroll's at 6 and Lawrence at 9?
That could be a home run sort of draft for the Calgary Flames. It could be 2 franchise altering players potentially. Even that could be a possibility. So I do think people should be a little more open to the idea of Tynan Lawrence, despite, like, the NCAA has really hurt the draft profiles of guys like Gavin McKenna, Keaton Verhoff, and Tynan Lawrence. And I think we need to take into consideration more just how difficult playing in the NCAA is as a 17 or 18-year-old, and going from, junior to, and the NCAA got significantly better with the change in the rules too. So it's not the NCAA from a couple of years ago. Like, this is like a whole nother league.
Yeah.
So I think people are being a little harsh on some of those prospects because they took that leap. Like, had Tynan Lawrence played in the dub, or Verhoff and Gavin McKenna both had stayed in the dub, I bet you they would be slam dunk top 5 picks, because they would have lit those leagues up. And I don't think there would have been any questioning about, where their draft stock is at. But because they played in a much better league in the NCAA against better players, and it's a huge adjustment, not only on the ice but off the ice, I think people are a little too hard on those types of players.
And I think we got to give them credit too for challenging themselves. Like, Verhoff moved over there at 17 years old and challenged himself. Tynan Lawrence, halfway through the season, decided to go to the NCAA to challenge himself, to be at the next level. It doesn't always pay off in the way some people think. And I think counting numbers are nice, but there's always more to hockey than a nice, goals and assists column to their game. How do they compete versus those bigger, better players? How do they adjust to the league? So there's a lot of that goes into it, rather than, hey, he only had, what did I say? I'll bring it up again. 7 points in 18 games. Okay, well, how did he get to that point? And so I think I'm with you there. The NCAA is a bigger, better league than it was 2 years ago. And the way we value those type of players is going to have to evolve along with it as well. And so it shouldn't hurt the value that a Lawrence or a Verhoff can bring to a team and to an organization. And I really hope that the pro scouts do a better job, or in those pro teams, than these Twitter pundits are doing on their little social media feeds, because these are some good hockey players. And if you don't draft Lawrence and he ends up being a top 6 somewhere else and helping them win playoff games, you might be kicking yourself a little bit here. So, do you want to talk jerseys, Robert, or should we say that for next week?
No, you can quickly do it.
Flames announce, or rumors are that there are 2 alternates coming for the Flames next season. It sounds like a 04 red jersey with the black C is coming. And then the interesting one for me is a jersey with a yellow C coming. Robert, what do you make of these rumored jerseys? It's kind of cool that the Flames are going to get 2 alternates next year.
Yeah, and on top of that, they're going to lose Blasty. So yeah, you lose Blasty and you add the black C, like the 04 version. And please, for the love of God, make it the 04 version with kind of like the diagonal stripes at the bottom and the horse head on the shoulders.
Yes, please.
Do not bring back like the stripes down the side and the flags on the shoulders. Do not bring back that version. That jersey was terrible.
If they bring back the flags,
awful era of Flames hockey.
If they bring back the Flames, I will do a Daniel Marimanoff style rant on this podcast for half an hour, because those were horrific.
So bad. So bad. So yeah, I desperately hope that they're like the 04 version. And I posted on Flames Nation yesterday, a bunch of photos of some of the guys in 04 and 05 and 06 wearing those jerseys, and it brought back some nostalgia. It brought back some good memories. The Black Sea looks I love the Black Sea. I think the Black Sea looks so good, and I love the current setup. I would never go away from the retros. I think those should be the Flames full-time jerseys, but to bring back the Black Sea as a third jersey, I think is such a cool idea, and I'm super, super pumped about that. Yeah, the other one I'm not so sure about.
It really depends how they approach it. If for me, a yellow sea can work, but you've got to have the right highlights around it and the right striping on the jersey. And so I'll wait till I see them before I make judgments, because it could go really bad. Like, we've seen some really bad jerseys out there when teams try to go off the rails a little bit here, but I give the Flames credit for trying to do something different. I just hope that their presentation of different isn't an absolute god-awful mess like that scripted jersey they did a few years ago, right at the end of Mark Giordano's career there. Those ones I hated those jerseys.
You didn't like the Walmart jersey?
I did not like it. I could find something better at Zeller's when it was around. I just hope that they approach it in the right way, and it's a simplistic jersey, and they don't try to do too much with it. And yellow is a hard color to nail when you're using just yellow. Look at how awful it is to watch Predator games right now when they're at home. It's a lot of yellow. And this is coming from a guy who likes yellow. So just hopefully they are careful with it. But bringing back that Black Sea for nostalgic reasons, anyone who's around in 04 or old enough to remember that run is just going to be immediate nostalgia for them. And I think those things are going to sell like hotcakes.
Yeah, and the one with the yellow sea, they're doing like across the NHL. It's almost like a reverse retro style program.
Yeah,
and the rumor is that it's essentially going to be like a tribute to the Saddle Dome jersey. So there's going to be elements of the dome included in the jersey, and then adding a yellow sea. And I mean, I hope it looks good. I hope they know what they're doing, but
that sounds disastrous. I'm sorry.
Surface, it does sound disastrous. You're definitely right.
It sounds like the striping at the bottom is going to be the mountain range, and it's going to try too hard. That's what that sounds like.
Well, Chris on Twitter, who does all those jersey mock-ups, the great
Chris
follow.
Wilson, he's awesome guy. Good follow.
Yeah, he put out one, I think it was yesterday, about like what the dome tribute jersey could look like with the yellow sea, and like he did a good job on the mock-up based on the information he was given, but seeing the yellow sea on the red jersey, I was like, I don't know if this is the play.
If you go yellow,
they do better than that.
If you go yellow sea, you almost have to go black jersey, because then you can use the red as your highlight.
Yeah, or even I was even thinking like burgundy potentially, almost like a Washington Commanders, or even like the Edge School out here in Calgary. Maybe like kind of like a maroon and yellow could maybe work well together. I don't know. That's the one I'm kind of worried about. Like I'm worried that could end up being the worst jersey in Flames history.
Much to Chris's mocks that he likes to do his concepts, he did do one similar that with the white and silver, which I quite like. So go to his Twitter, Chris Wilson, and look at that one as well if you're out there listening. I think that white one with the silver lining on it's actually pretty sweet. It's on that same tweet that you put out on Flames Nation, Robert. You guys retweeted. It's interesting. We'll see how the Flames work those jerseys there, and how the alternate comes in. I'm a jersey guy. People who know me knows I'm a jersey guy, so I'll buy them both eventually, most likely. The only one I don't have of the Flames is that stupid scripted jersey. I'm actively avoiding it because I think it's horrendous. But other than that, I have them all, so I'm probably going to buy these ones too. So hopefully they are good. And Flames, please, for the love of, make it. Don't overthink them as well. Like let's just do what the fans want, right? Just bring back the 04s, make it nice, and be simplistic with the yellow sea.
And don't mess with the 04s. Just go with that jersey. Like literally
last on the shoulder. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, just quickly.
Yeah.
So I think we all know your answer after your rant there. Worst jersey in Flames history. You think it's the scripted one?
It's the scripted one too, and that god awful patch on the shoulders too. I don't know what they were thinking. Nothing about that jersey was nice except for the color of the red.
Yeah, the color of the red was good. I like the white numbers as well. I thought the white numbers looked good on there.
Sure.
I think mine would be the reverse retro they did 3 years ago. the black pedestal in the white C. I was not a fan of that. I thought that was a gross jersey.
The reason I didn't mind that one, and this is going to show my age a little bit, is I grew up with the Young Guns, right? Like I was 10, 11, 12, like grade 2 with the 92 team. Like, so I was right in the heart of when Val Bure and early Theo Fleury were running the team, and Craig Simpson came through town, those teams there. So I for me, it was a little bit more nostalgic, which is why that script one's an uglier jersey for me. But I definitely get why those who didn't grow up in that era that I grew up in don't like that jersey. I absolutely fully get it.
Yeah, it was not good. It was during a time when the Flames were not an enjoyable team to watch. So I guess that doesn't help either.
Been a few of those years. Anything else you want to bring up on today's podcast, Robert? Or where can the Flames fans find you and your work?
Yeah, just continue to follow at Ring of Fire CGY. I'm bringing back the random Flames goal of the day because I literally can't think of any other content to post because there's nothing going on with this team. So I'm bringing that back. So that'll be fun. So yeah, just continue to follow along. Thanks for listening.
And FlamesNation.ca. For some odd reason, Ryan Pike's finding lots to talk about. So go over and follow them as well.
Pike is a machine.
Yeah, he is a machine.
He can write article after article about the Flames. It's unbelievable.
And he has some intriguing insights in a lot of things as well. He's a good off-season follow if you're itching for some content. Of course, after listening to the Red Mile Rundown, I am Vintage Johnny 84 across social media. He is Ring of Fire CGY on social media. And of course, the show Red Mile Rundown, wherever you get your content out. We appreciate you for your likes, your subscriptions, and for the few 5-star ratings and reviews we've gotten. Appreciate you, and appreciate those who comment on the YouTube channel as well. Gotten a few of those over the last couple of weeks. So love that we're getting some more views on YouTube as well. We will see you guys next week for some more awesome conversation. Nothing like taking a 3-topic rundown, Robert, and turning it into an hour and 20 minutes. So, but we've done it here today.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. See you next week, folks. Have a great week and enjoy the rest of the playoffs.